Welcome to episode 12 of the Gluttons For Punishment Podcast, or GFP, a Toronto Maple Leafs and NHL podcast hosted by Michael Lepore and Anthony Bruno. He's Lepore, I'm Bruno. Thank you so much for listening and watching us on YouTube as well. If you're listening to us on Apple, Google, or Spotify, we would really appreciate it if you give us a 5-star rating and review. And of course, if you are watching us on YouTube, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell so you know exactly when the GFP podcast is posting some new content. So, the Toronto Maple Leafs are currently on a 3-game winning streak after 2 overtime victories this past week over the Ottawa Senators and Edmonton Oilers. We're going to get into the week that was for the Leafs and give you our thoughts and opinions on everything that went down with this team. But before we do that, it is time to welcome in my partner in crime, Mr. Michael Lepore. How you doing, buddy?
Anthony Bruno, things are going good. I remember last week, not to get negative to start the show, but I remember last week I was talking about the sun being out and it being all warm here in Ottawa. Well, now we got minus weather. We have rain. We have dampness. It's fucking terrible and gloomy outside. So quick swing, hashtag Ottawa. That's what we deal with with our weather here. But 2 nice overtime wins for the Leafs is enough to put you in a good mood. So all I can do is smile.
Yeah, as long as the Leafs are winning, Lepore, everything is good. I'm just waiting to go golfing, man. I went to the driving range this past week, so I'm still waiting to play my first round of the year, but I'm just dying to go out there and play some golf. With
your muscles, you got some Bryson DeChambeau in you, or
a little bit. You know what though? I got to work on my flexibility, man.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Some people tell me I'm a little bit too stiff when I swing the club, so I maybe got to do some more yoga sessions. But I'm working on it.
An Italian playing yoga and golf. You don't see that too often.
I know. Oh man, but yeah, I hope one thing I don't hope happens is that the Leafs golf early this year.
Oh,
so that would not be fun.
Here come the jokes. Yeah, I haven't heard those before.
But Lepore, let's go over the week that was, man. So the Leafs, just 2 games this week, got some more rest, I guess, which is nice as they prepare for the stretch run of the season. But things started off Thursday night against the Ottawa Senators. The Leafs pick up a 3-2 victory in overtime. Jack Campbell got the start at net. Freddie Anderson still out with an injury.
Yeah.
And Campbell made a couple of puck handling blunders.
Yeah.
It was pretty bizarre to see him do that because he's been so sharp this season. And for the most part, he was pretty sharp in this game, despite making those 2 puck handling blunders that almost cost the Leafs the win. So the Leafs ended up getting the W on Thursday night. They got regulation goals from Ilya Mikheyev. The puck bounced in off his chest, and then Jason Spezza scored a goal that deflected into the net. So Spezza continues to play really well. And then Austin Matthews made that unbelievable play in overtime. He breaks up that 3-on-1 in the neutral zone and then almost scores pretty much the goal of the season before Mitch Marner set up Justin Hall for the OT winner. So it was good to see because, as we all know, the Leafs have struggled this year with the Ottawa Senators, and another game goes to overtime against them. But I'm sure Leaf fans are very relieved that they were able to pull out that victory. And then the second game of the week, Saturday night against the Edmonton Oilers, Edmonton gets out to a 3-1 lead. So the Leafs head into the third period down 2, and they mount a fantastic comeback. And then Austin Matthews, who came into the game, I believe, with 0 goals in his past 5 games. The guy's hitting 1 million posts. He's getting stoned right, left, and center.
It's crazy.
And then, of course, the OT winner that he scores pinballs off of 2 guys and goes into the net. So it looks like the fortune is finally coming in Matthews' favor after everything that he's gone through the past couple of weeks, where it just seems like nothing's going in for him. So, and Jack Campbell, Lepore, improves to 6-0-0 on the season. So, another solid performance from him. He wasn't great against the Oilers, but good enough for the Leafs to mount that comeback and get the job done. So
exactly.
The Toronto Maple Leafs, Lepore, now 22-10-2, 46 points. They lead the Canadian division. They're 7th in the NHL in points percentage. So What'd you think of them this week, man? I need your take.
Well, I'll start with the Ottawa game. They played really well in that game. They made the right decision even before the game started, not wearing the green St. Pat's jerseys, because they have fucking terrible luck in those jerseys against the Ottawa Senators, even going back. So number one, they made that positive decision. They outshot Ottawa 41-31. I saw Craig Button after the game doing the game review, and he said that Toronto had, I think it was something like 3 times the puck possession of Ottawa, or the puck was in Ottawa's end 3 times more than it was in Toronto's end.
Unbelievable.
So Toronto obviously dominated the game. The Geeks had that game at a 75% win for the Leafs. But you mentioned that Campbell stuff, and it was very Toronto Maple Leafs, and I say that often on the show, in the way that we've been pumping this goalie's tires like crazy. You're expecting a letdown, and you see that first giveaway. And of course, who else but downtown Connor Brown for it to fall on his stick for the goal. And he celebrated it pretty hard, eh?
He was so fired up.
He was fucking fired up. For a goalie mishap, he enjoyed that one. And good for Connor Brown. We all like Connor. And then for Campbell to do it again, man. And I saw someone say, and again, you get leeway in the NHL or professional sports for that matter, but can you imagine Frederik Andersen made those 2 mistakes?
Oh my God. Leafs Twitter would have lost its goddamn mind.
Twitter would have had a fucking meltdown. But like I've said often, and going way back, like way back, it seems every time that the Leafs in the Sens play, it's a terrible game, but sort of like an exciting, sloppy game. Like you get a lot of like 5-4s, a lot of overtimes, like bad goaltending, like high scoring games. This was just a terrible game in the way that it seemed like neither team could really penetrate. Like I'll give Ottawa a lot of credit. They collapsed on Toronto pretty well. Like it's like to Craig Button's point or observation, we had a lot of the puck and we were in their end a lot, but we did get our chances, but I don't seem to remember it being like we were all over them and creating all these 5-star danger chances. So credit to the Sens for keeping us to the outside. And I mean, all 4 goals were garbage at the end of the day, in the regulation anyway. You had the 2 giveaways by Campbell, like we touched on. And then like even our goals, I mean, the one that hits the post hits McCabe and goes in. And then the Spezza one was on a turnover, and then his shot goes off someone and in. So just 4 bad goals. The overtime, I mean, great play by Spezza. I'm saying that so often, I'm getting kind of used to it.
Well, we all know Spezza is like the greatest player of all time.
Oh, he's definitely approaching that conversation. But the great play by Matthews to knock that puck down from the pass by it was Shabbat, right? Yeah, it was Shabbat. And great goal. Can you imagine Matthews would have scored that goal, though?
Oh, that would have been the goal of the season.
Oh, my God.
The goal of the season, hands down. I know we've seen some really great goals this year, but for him to make that play in the neutral zone, and people were like, oh, Shabbat shouldn't have tried that pass. Like, as if like that was an easy play for Matthews to just like stick up his leg and deflect it, back into the Senators zone and go the other way up, on that rush that they had. So yeah, that would have been an insane goal if he finished that off.
Bittersweet that it went in the way it did. And one of the things, I didn't think about it, but I mean, every time the Leafs are in town here, I go see them, right? And obviously, and a buddy of mine messaged me after the game saying, can you imagine that game with the 18,000 fans in the building, and it's that sea of blue and white that always invades Ottawa? And can you imagine the explosion that would have been on that winning goal?
Oh my God.
Just like the excitement of just like what we're dealing with now, and the way that it's just a reminder of what's being taken away from us at the moment. Because I just picture myself at that game with a buddy or my nephew or another family member, and just those chances going back and forth, like the tension of the overtime, Matthews making that move, not scoring, that letdown, and the puck going in front, then Hall putting it in. Like, we would have went absolutely crazy. Leafs fans would have had a blast. So bittersweet. Again, great moment, but just too bad that we can't experience those moments right now in person, right? And get the full emotion and beauty of what sports is. But just breaking down the game, I mean, Toronto played well. Again, we said this a lot on the show, that they're playing well every game. A little bit of frustration on putting the puck in. Ottawa kept it going with their goalie carousel, putting in that Forsberg kid. Have you heard the story about this kid?
He's been claimed off waivers, I think, like what, twice this year?
I think it's no, Bruno. I think it's 4 times.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and then someone even mentioned like what he's had to deal with state to state, crossing borders with a quarantine, this and that. Like the guy's gonna write a book.
Be a nightmare for him.
Yeah, and again, the whole like Toronto Maple Leafs thing going into the game, everyone's like, "Yeah, 50 save shutout." This kid that no one's heard of,
and it was almost happening, man.
Yeah, he played well. Good for him. He played well. But yeah, I mean, did you have anything really jump out at you from that Sens game that you thought like alarm bell should go off, or just ho hum, 2 points, move on?
No, it was just another case of the Leafs dominating play. And you mentioned it, whether you're looking at the metrics on moneypuck.com and you're seeing, the percentage or how many times the Leafs would win the game based on 500 simulations, when you look at the shot share, the scoring chances and all that. But even just watching the game with the eye test, I mean, it was another game the Leafs dominated play. They had the puck in the Senators' end most of the game, and they just weren't scoring. Yeah. But again, kind of like we've talked about, like this team, specifically looking at Austin Matthews and that top line. I mean, Matthews hitting posts left, right, and center, getting robbed. And it's not just Matthews. It's been, a lot of the top players on this team that haven't been able to break through and consistently score. And yes, when you look at, the scoring leaderboard for the Leafs, their big 4 forwards are all their top 4 leading scorers and everything seems fine. But I feel like they've still left so much on the table this year.
For sure.
And you watch that Ottawa game and you're like, this game shouldn't be this close. This game should not be going to overtime. And I know that Ottawa's been playing better recently, but I mean, Lepore, that's still a team you got to punish. And, we've talked about this on a previous show where, the division might come down to who dominates the Senators more, right? You look at the Oilers, who were 7-0 against Ottawa this year.
Yeah, it's huge.
And now the Leafs, after that win, are 4
2-1.
4-2-1 against the Senators, which is fine.
Yeah,
that's fine. But you would expect them to be even better against Ottawa, right? But at the end of the day, they got the win. There was nothing too alarming. I mean, yeah, did I think that maybe Anton Forsberg was going to, pull another random goalie who no one has ever heard of and dominates the Leafs and 40 saves? And I mean, yeah, it kind of scared me a little bit, but for the most part, I thought the Leafs played well. But Lepore, I know you have some thoughts on the Senators, who have been playing better recently and maybe aren't as bad as a lot of people think they are, just, looking at the standings.
Yeah, I thought I would post the question. I mean, the Sens right now, as we stand here today, they are 12, 20, and 4, which is not good. I mean, we would all say that, but they started the season. I think people are forgetting, and this is a compliment to them. I mean, they've forced this upon people. People are forgetting how bad their start was. Their start was 2, 12, and 1 in their first 15 games. And if you remember those games, they were allowing goals and getting beaten at historical rates. I remember conversations of, is this team worse than the inaugural season Washington Capitals? Because you go through it, and I was on the score app just flipping through this, and you see those early losses, and I'm just remembering as best as I can, is 5-2, 6-1, 4-1, 6-1. They were getting fucking hammered.
They were just getting pumped every
single game. And we kind of had this thing set in our minds that the Ottawa Senators were going to be the whipping boy of the division for the entire season. And if you look at the recent play over the last month to 6 weeks, it's been a lot better. And is it time to kind of switch that narrative and take the Sens more seriously? So in their last 21 games, they're 10-8-3. So
bad at all.
That's not bad at all. And again, with where they are in terms of a franchise rebuilding, and even you look around the division, you look at Calgary lately, you look at Vancouver, I'm sure it's comparable to them. So, and this may be because teams are taking them lightly. I mean, I've even seen it in a few post games where after the Sens beat them, after a team gets beaten by the Sens, they're talking to the players on the opposing team, and they're kind of, I don't want to say not giving credit to the Sens, but they're kind of blaming the loss all on themselves, saying, "Oh, we didn't have it tonight. We lacked intensity. We didn't create scoring chances." Rather than that other cliche statement of we lost to a good team tonight. They're working hard, and I think that these guys say. I never try to read too much into what guys say pregame and postgame, But I think it is a little telling in the way that these teams are expecting to beat the Senators, and maybe that's working to the Sens' favor. I mean, regardless, but props to them. I mean, they got a young team. DJ Smith apparently has them dialed in over the last few weeks to put up a record of 10-8-3. And what's interesting to me was, and we can talk about this, I'm sure you saw Dorian's reaction to the overtime winner.
Throwing his lemon water.
Yeah, I was kind of like, at first I was like, like, why are you so upset?
Yeah, you should be happy your team's losing, so you get another high draft pick this season.
Yeah, well, there's that end to it. And then there's the end of like, yeah, you just lost to a good team in overtime. And like maybe in that moment, he was really upset that Shabbat gave the puck away. And Shabbat had a fucking nightmare of a game. Like he gave up the puck on the Spezza goal as well. And there's the other one he gave up to Matthews, who had like a short breakaway in the first period, I believe, and he couldn't score. So Shabbat had an absolute nightmare. And they're playing him crazy minutes.
Oh, I want to say he leads all defensemen in minutes per game.
It's like stupid sometimes.
Ton of minutes.
Yeah, like
I don't know
30
why.
minutes,
like
32 minutes.
We know he's a great player, but man, to be playing that many minutes.
Yeah.
So right now, I'm actually just checking Lepore. He's second in the league behind Drew Doughty. He's playing over 26 minutes a night.
Okay. But it seems to me the certain nights he's playing like 32 minutes, 31 minutes. I'm like, whoa, who does that? You know what I mean? But yeah, I mean, again, it's encouraging for that organization to be putting that kind of product on the ice. And I mean, they do want to get fans excited when hockey does resume, for fans anyway, with regard to that side of the game. So I think it's just time. Like I will say that to me, that's a big enough sample size to say that this team should be taken seriously. And even to points we haven't touched on yet. So they started 2-12-1. This team is a young team. They didn't have a training camp. They didn't play in the play-in last year, so they hadn't played since March 2020. So
they
really,
had a year off essentially.
Yeah, like to get off to a bad start, essentially. I mean, that was really bad. But at the end of the day, I think I'm more starting to believe that what we've seen from the Ottawa Senators in the last few weeks to a month is more a representative of that team than what we saw earlier on. Do you have a hard take on them?
Yeah, I mean, that's fair to say. I think you bring up a good point where they're really just not getting any respect. And I think teams are going into games against them being like, okay, this is kind of like the easy part of our schedule here. You know, we just came off a game against whoever, the Leafs, the Jets, or Connor McDavid and the Oilers. And then you're playing the Senators team and you look at the standings and you see their record and you see their terrible goal differential. And you go, okay, this should be a cakewalk tonight. And, you know, teams will play their backup goalies against them. Like I even think about the Leafs, you know, a couple of weeks ago when they started Michael Hutchinson against Ottawa, right? So it's just like one of those games where it's like, okay, let's just throw in our backup goalie. As long as we play a decent game, we should get the win. But that hasn't been the case, especially recently. And, you know, we've talked about this so many times about how many like good young players they have that we really like. I mean, Thomas Chabot, at the end of the day, even though he had a rough game on Thursday night against the Leafs, like he's a really good defenseman and he's in the conversation right now for, you know, playing on Team Canada in the Olympics, right? Mm-hmm. So we all know he's a great player. They got Tim Stützle, Brady Tkachuk, you know, Drake Batherson, Josh Norris. They got some talent. Now, I don't think the Senators are anywhere close to, you know, competing with the top teams in the league. I mean, never mind the North Division, but yeah, I mean, I think it's just a case of maybe, like you said, Lepore, they're closer now to Calgary and Vancouver than they are, let's say, to like the Buffalo Sabres.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Or just a complete,
which is encouraging. Yeah,
exactly. And I think if you're a Senators fan, you got to be excited about the future because, you know, even though Pierre Dorion is in his suite throwing his lemon water, pissed off that, you know, the Senators lost the game. At the end of the day, this team is going to get another high draft pick.
Yeah.
And that's important, right? And the more picks you have, the more opportunities you have to land, let's call it franchise altering players, right? So I think for the Senators, what you want to see at this point is just a competitive team that's not getting blown out like they were at the beginning of the season. You want to see the young guys continue to play better. You want to see them playing closer games against the top teams in the North Division. So I think if you're a Senators fan right now, it is what it is. You know, this team isn't ready yet, and you're happy to see them play competitive hockey, and you're pleased that they're going to get another high draft pick. It's just as simple as that.
Yeah, speaking of Sens fans being excited, I don't know if you caught the NCAA game last night with Minnesota and North Dakota. The Sens have 3 big prospects on North Dakota. They have Pinto, Bernard Docker, and Sanderson. And that game went to a 5th overtime period.
Crazy.
And finally, Minnesota won. If I remember correctly, Minnesota scored. It was in the 2nd or 3rd overtime, I believe. I might be wrong on that. But anyways, they scored in one of the overtimes, and then it got called back. And then they did score in the 5th overtime. It was a garbage goal that went off someone. I mean, it always is. But incredible game. If everyone's got time, if anyone's got time, go check out those highlights. It was I love college hockey, very underrated from an entertainment standpoint, I think. But again, the Sens got to see some more of their prospects do well. And actually, I guess we'll find out this week with regard to those players if they're going pro. I know Pinto and Bernard Docker, they're expecting to announce that they are going pro because I can't remember if they're either sophomores or juniors, but Sanderson's a freshman, and being a defenseman, they're expecting him, and being only 18, that he'll stay another year. But exciting time for Sens fans, and it'll be a big week for them to find out about those kids.
Big time. Yeah, Lepore. So I guess now we can move in to the second game of the week that the Leafs played against the Edmonton Oilers, who have been chasing the Leafs in the standings all season. And it just seems like the Leafs have Edmonton's number.
Yeah, they hate us.
Oilers cannot figure out the Leafs because after Saturday night's win, the Leafs are now 6-1-1 against Connor McDavid and the Edmonton Oilers. And McDavid and Draisaitl played really well on Saturday night. You know,
Crazy.
They combine for that insane play where McDavid comes flying into the zone, has eyes on the back of his head, makes that ridiculous cross-ice pass to Draisaitl, who one times had passed Jack Campbell. Sheldon Keefe was actually talking about this goal, I believe, during after Sunday's practice, and he's like, "There's maybe 5 guys in the world who can make a play like that." Yeah. And you saw 2 of them on the ice on Saturday night.
Yeah.
But despite that, you know, the Leafs found a way to come back, and it was another frustrating game, Lepore, because, you know, kind of like the Senators game, the Leafs dominated play. They controlled the shot attempts. They had the puck most of the game in Edmonton's zone. Edmonton didn't really have a lot of quality scoring chances. I mean, they did attack the Leafs on the rush, and that's how they scored most of their goals, with McDavid essentially spearheading the attack. And it was another game where it's like, are you kidding me? The Leafs once again outplay their opponent and can't find a way to score. Now, obviously, they scored a couple goals in the third period. John Tavares and William Nylander getting going a little bit, and then Matthews with the pinball goal in overtime. So, Lepore, what are your thoughts on that Saturday night game against the Oilers? Like, are you concerned at all with how the Leafs dominated once again and, you know, had to fight back and win the game in overtime?
I'd be lying if I said I wasn't concerned, because I feel like we're saying a lot of the same things after these games, win or lose. Like, a lot of these games, they lose, the ones they do lose, oh, you know, whatever, they played really well. It was just one of those nights. And then even a lot of the games they win, it's a lot closer than it should be based on the underlying numbers, the shot counts, the shot attempts, the puck possession. Again, Money Puck had that game at 75% Leafs again. And it takes a bullshit goal. It takes a comeback and a bullshit goal in overtime to win. And it's scary, man, because like we've been here before, where we've outplayed teams. The second year against the Bruins, the 5-on-5 play was heavily in Toronto's favor. We all know that last year, Toronto was all over Columbus when it came to the metrics, and they didn't win. Now, if people want to blame it on goaltending or whatever, it doesn't matter. Like, we have to put these teams away when we're dominating play. And what I'll circle it to, and he did score last night, a great play by Galchenyuk, but I will circle it to Tavares. Like, I think JT is the X factor in this, in the way that if he's producing, it's not about playing well. He's always, JT is good enough of a player that he's always kind of playing well, but it's about actually producing. If he's producing at the rate that we expect him to, which is as a player who makes $11 million, which, okay, let's throw a number out there. What is there? That's 30 to 40 goals and 80 points. If he's at that clip, and he gives us the 2-headed monster at center, that's when we're going to destroy teams. But if he's just playing well, like he like his talent will let him, even when the puck's not going in for him. I think we run into these situations when we have a lot of the puck chances, outskating other teams. The puck's always in their end, but we're losing or we're winning a game that's a lot closer than it should be. And it's frustrating. And to me, it's very, very scary. And it's things like this that you try not to get too deep into, because you sometimes think that maybe it's just you get these feelings because you're watching your own team. So you see, Tampa wins close games, that they dominate this and that. But I feel like we've been talking about this all year in the way that we're very happy with the results. We're very happy with the Leafs record, but we want to see more dominating performances by way of the actual fucking scoreboard. Like, you've shown us now you can dominate play. And we know this is an organization that prides itself on investing in metrics. Remember correctly, there was the announcement last year that MLSE is putting $50 million in the Toronto Maple Leafs advanced stats department. So, okay, we see that and there's results that way and this team is winning. But if you have 75% of a scoring chance share, or even go lower in today's NHL, if you go to the 60%, you should be winning games easily. And what I think we saw last night was how Edmonton can beat us. And we all know that. It's not surprising. We know if we play this team in the playoffs, and it's very likely, it will be a game. There'll be a lot of games like last night where the Leafs are going to have the puck. The Leafs top to bottom are a better team, but that star power can beat you. So there's that thing in me that's like, if there is a team that's going to beat us that we outplay, it's going to be them, because we very well could have lost last night. And it would have been
especially if you're giving them chances off the rush.
Exactly.
Right? Like, because the Leafs usually like to get aggressive with their D-men. They jump into the play, and then you give McDavid and Draisaitl like an odd man rush going the other way. It's trouble.
You're fucked. Yeah, exactly. And that's where it is scary and concerning to me. And I mean, it's funny now because the advanced stats guy would tell me, oh, it's just bad luck. It'll even out. The puck will start going in for them, both as a team, as far as the team goes and as far as individuals go. Like you touched on Matthews. Matthews could have scored a hat trick last night again. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't scared. Are you as scared as I am, Bruno?
Yeah. No,
are you the calm one in the family?
No, Lepore, I'm right there with you, man. I think you nailed it. I am scared because, like you brought up about Columbus last season, that was a series in the qualifying round that if you look at the advanced metrics and you were on moneypuck.com every game, the Leafs dominated that series just in terms of puck possession and shot attempts and things like that. But there were moments where they got too aggressive because, like I just mentioned, they love when their D-men jump into the play. Sheldon
engage
Keefe,
is the word. The D-men engage. Yeah.
He encourages the shit out of that. If there's an opportunity for Morgan Riley, Justin Hall, Jake Muzzin, TJ Brody, where they can create sort of an isolated odd man opportunity with a defenseman joining the play in the offensive zone, Sheldon Keefe gives them free rein. But sometimes that results in odd man rushes the other way. And when you're playing a team like Edmonton, they're going to kill you. When you have McDavid flying the other way and he's got eyes on the back of his head and he can make these insane cross ice passes, insane drop passes, that's a team that would scare me. And listen, we all know that the Leafs are better than Edmonton. We know that the Leafs are better than every team in the Canadian division, especially when it comes to the advanced metrics. And we know how much Kyle Dubas and the front office likes this stuff, right? And bases a lot of their decisions on these advanced metrics. But like you said, Lepore, at the end of the day, this team needs to fucking score goals.
Yeah.
And that's what it comes down to. And is it going to even out in the regular season? Like, is Austin Matthews going to finally score again? Yes, of course he's going to. This guy's getting like 4 or 5 high danger chances every game, it seems, right? He's hitting posts all the time. Like, that's going to turn around. But at the end of the day, this is going to come down to a 7-game playoff series. And it doesn't matter who they play. It's going to be concerning if we see the same thing. And guess what, Lepore? We are going to see the same thing. I don't care who the Leafs play in the first 2 rounds of the playoffs. They're going to dominate play.
Exactly.
In this Canadian division. We know that, all the nerds are going to be on Twitter. They're going to say, look, the Leafs dominated play in this game. They controlled 63% of the shot attempts. They had this many high danger scoring chances. Listen, Michael Lepore and I, we love the numbers. We love the advanced metrics. But at the end of the day, this team needs to produce. And I love that point that you made about John Tavares, because we know game in and game out, that first line with Matthews and Marner, they're getting all the attention. They're facing the best matchups on the other team. The other team's number one center or best defensive center and top defense pairing is always going up against those guys. And I really do think, Lepore, that a lot of it is going to come down to that second line with John Tavares and William Nylander, because their matchup is not nearly as difficult on a nightly basis. And sure, there are moments in the game where they get matched up against, the other team's top line. It happens at times, obviously, just because of the flow of the game. But for the most part, those guys need to start taking advantage of those opportunities. If John Tavares and William Nylander can find a little bit more consistency in their game and start scoring some more goals, that is just going to work wonders for this team, because we all know that Matthews and Marner are going to produce on a nightly basis. They're elite players. But if Tavares and Nylander can find a way, and listen, they're not going to produce at the same clip as Matthews and Marner, but if they can find a way to exploit some of those matchups and finish off just a few more of these scoring chances, then the Leafs are going to stop, chasing some of these games and being forced to win games in overtime against teams that they should be beating. I really think that's a great point you brought up with that second line.
Keefe had a presser a few days ago, and he was talking about how good Tavares has been defensively. And part of me was like, yeah, that's great, and I expect him to.
It's like, we don't care.
Don't fucking care. I want 35, 40 goals. Yeah. Like, we got to bury these teams. $11 million. And again, like, John's been good. Like, I was the first one earlier in the year to say, like, everyone was too hard on him. He was putting up points, and eventually he would start going in for him, and the numbers would come. But to win, it's like to win, to advance, to go deep in the playoffs, you have to be playing above yourself almost. And he's not playing above himself. And that's what we're going to have to see. To me, when we look back at this season and the playoff run the Leafs have, whether it's 1 round or 4 rounds, to me, the thing we're going to circle to talk about will be John Tavares' performance based on how good it was, or how, I don't say how bad it was, but just how meh it was. And he was good, but he didn't bring it, for lack of better terminology, and trying my best not to sound cheesy.
No, I really think that's what it's going to come down to, because you look at any team over the last number of years that's made a deep playoff run, like, you need that secondary scoring. Like, of course you need your stars to play well in the playoffs. Like, that's a given. And I expect Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner to play well in the playoffs. They have a track record, especially Austin Matthews, of being pretty darn good in the playoffs. So it really is going to come down to that secondary scoring for the Leafs. And it's funny because I'm almost not even worried, Lepore, about like the third line anymore with like Hyman, Mikheyev, and Engvall, and even like, wherever Spezza's playing in the lineup, the Spezza, Thornton, and whoever line, right? I mean, I know the Leafs like to mix and match a lot. Like, I'm not even lately, worried. Actually. What's that? Sorry?
A lot lately. I find there's been a lot of mixing and matching lately. I don't know what Keefe's trying to figure out. And I guess Galchenyuk came in. And
he loves experimenting. Like, if he has a thought about putting someone on a different line and just trying to see if there's any chemistry there, like, he doesn't hesitate one bit.
Do you think it's because they just haven't been, because they've kind of fallen off where they started the season? He's trying to figure it out again, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? The Leafs kind of have like the luxury of trying to figure it out, because, like we've said before, like, yes, it would be nice to win the Canadian division, but I don't think they really care. Like, even if they come second, like, this team is going to be judged solely on how they perform in the playoffs. And yeah, like, getting back to my point about like the bottom 6, like, I'm not even really worried about the bottom 6, because I like the way that they've played for the most part throughout the season. Like, you look at Jason Spezza, the guy's playing less than 11 minutes a game, and he's got like 20 points this year. And
more 5-on-5 points than Tavares.
It's unbelievable, man. Yeah. And sure, is the bottom 6 going to produce, at the clip they're producing now come playoff time? Probably not, but it's going to come down to that second line with Tavares and Nylander. Like, they're going to have to find a way to produce. And if they can, and the Leafs have that 2-headed attack down the middle of Tavares and Matthews, that is just going to be an absolute nightmare for any team to deal with. Never mind the teams in the Canadian division. That's going to be a nightmare to deal with if you're Tampa Bay, if you're Colorado, if you're Vegas. The Leafs on paper stack up against any of those teams. So, no, I'm right there with you, Lepore. I think that's going to be of the utmost importance come playoff time. Another thing I wanted to get into Lepore, is the play of Oilers defenseman and former Leaf Tyson Barrie, who right now
Leafs legend
Tyson Barrie, who right now is second in the NHL in scoring among defensemen behind Victor Hedman. After he was a pretty big disappointment for the most part with the Leafs last season. We know he performed a little bit better after Sheldon Keefe took over the head coaching job. But, I mean, man, he is just absolutely balling out right now with the Oilers.
He's having a good time. Yeah, good for Barrie. I mean, I think Barrie's one of those guys. Things were not going well for him with Babs. There was all those rumors that it even went as far as he asked for a trade. Then Keefe came in, and as you mentioned, like things did go pretty well for him, at least from the standpoint of putting up points. But he just never became what we hoped he would be. It's actually kind of funny. Remember the first take when we got Barrie? It was like, well, the Leafs can't afford him. He's going to want 8 times 8. And just to think of that idea now of like Tyson Barrie getting a $64 million contract is absolutely bananas. And I don't know, like I think all Leafs fans would agree that where we put that money in TJ Brody is more of what we needed, just from a standpoint of a defensive player. Like even if Brody even gets nominated for a Norris Trophy, because let's face it, it's about points and it's stupid like that. So I think even if that happened, no one would really be that upset because we know what we needed at the time. I don't know, but has Brody always kind of benefited? And maybe he's a smart guy. So who's he played for, Bruno? Colorado. Not that he chose to play with Colorado, but okay, Colorado, high-paced team. Get the puck up to those forwards. Go. He's gonna get points. Then he comes to Toronto, and it's like again. A lot of talent.
Similar team.
Yeah, a lot of guys can score.
Offense.
Yeah, power play should get numbers. And then he's in a situation where he can try to save his brand. And where does he go? Guy's not stupid. He went to Edmonton for that 1-year deal, and he's feeding the puck up the ice to 2 of the best players in the universe, and he's getting a shit ton of points. So good for him. I mean, I think what people say about Barrie too is that he put up with a lot of shit in Toronto, whether he deserved it or not. And I'll give the guy credit in the way that, like, he never showed attitude. He never gave that, like, woe is me, shrugged his shoulders thing when asked a question about his play or his relationship with Babs. He answered all the questions properly. I heard him in an interview once. I think it was on Spin Chicklets. And he did say at the time about how excited he was to go to Toronto. Like, he was at a restaurant when he got the call, and he was stoked to have that opportunity to go to the Leafs. So I'm happy for the guy. Like, he's doing well, and he's a good fit in Edmonton. So I'll be intrigued to see what he does, whether it's one of those cases where he just looks out for the huge payday based on his production, or if he just knows he has a really good thing in Edmonton. And if they want him to stay and they want to commit to him, if he decides that it's a good place for him as well.
Yeah, I like Tyson Barrie. I've always been a fan of his. And when the Leafs traded for him, I'm on the record. I really liked that trade. I've talked about it so many times. The Leafs dealt from a position of strength. They acquired someone who has proven to be really one of the best power play quarterbacks over the last 4 to 5 years in the NHL. Now, is he as good as John Carlson or Victor Hedman, guys like that? No, but he has obviously shown that if you put him with talented players, whether it's Colorado, the Leafs, Edmonton, this dude is going to rack up points on the power play. So,
and maybe he skates better than those two guys too. I mean, he can move. So
he's a great skater. He's got a ton of skill. So I'm not too surprised, because honestly, if you get an opportunity to run that Oilers power play, a lot of the times you're just going to pick up points almost by accident.
Yeah,
really, right? You're going to pick up secondary assists. McDavid and Draisaitl are the guys that are running that power play, even though they're not on the point.
Yeah,
right. Those are the guys that are making everything happen. And not to take anything away from Tyson Barrie, he's had a fantastic bounce back season. And even if you look at a guy like Darnell Nurse, he's been awesome. 11 goals this year.
Yeah.
And I really like his all-around game. He can be physical. He blocks shots. He's solid defensively. He can obviously chip in offensively. Even he's getting an opportunity now to run the power play at times. Yeah. So
he stands up for his teammates too.
Yeah. I mean, that's a guy that I think any team in the NHL would love to have. And when it comes to Tyson Barrie, I mean, it'll be very interesting to see what happens, because I would not even think about giving this guy a 7-year deal for, $7-8 million. I think that would be a disaster. To give a guy like that a long-term contract at this point, because when I look at his all-around game, I still think that he does have holes. And I think it was more magnified when we were able to watch him sort of on a nightly basis playing for the Toronto Maple Leafs. So
yeah, that doesn't help.
yeah, exactly. Right. But I thought you made a really good point where the money was better spent on TJ Brody, because man, I have been so impressed with TJ Brody this year, but it's not even about, how well TJ Brody's been playing. It's that the Leafs already had their Tyson Barrie in Morgan Riley.
Yeah.
They didn't really need another guy like that. And, as much as Kyle Dubas probably loved the, underlying numbers when it came to Tyson Barrie, not just the underlying numbers, his raw, stat
skill,
totals,
talent. Yeah.
Yeah. And everything you see even just watching the guy play. But at the end of the day, when you have Morgan Riley who can do all those things and run the top power play unit, having a Tyson Barrie just isn't going to be as impactful. Right. And I think it just wasn't a good fit. It just wasn't a good fit with the Leafs. And, kudos to him for having a nice bounce back season. I'm sure he's going to collect a sweet little payday at the end of the year when he becomes an unrestricted free agent. And I'm sure he's probably going to want to stay in Edmonton and continue playing with those elite players. So at the end of the day, it's good on Tyson Barrie, and, I'm sure he's going to continue to play well with the Oilers for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
All right, Lepore. So now we got to kind of get into a little incident that happened this past week in
Drama.
the NHL.
Yeah.
With referee Tim Peel.
Yeah.
So he was reffing during a game between the Detroit Red Wings and Nashville Predators. And the refs, they all wear microphones now because they have to make calls on the broadcast. And obviously the NHL loves when fans sitting at home can hear the calls that the refs are making. And the game was going to commercial break. And obviously the broadcast completely screwed this up.
Yeah, I heard it was like a 1 in a million thing. The kid fucked up, and just the timing was the worst timing in the world. I think I heard he thought they were already at commercial or something, and just his timing was off, and just total
exactly.
nightmare.
There was a major blunder on the technical side of things when it comes to that broadcast, and Tim Peel was caught on a hot mic, essentially admitting that he was looking to make a makeup call because he missed a call earlier in the game. So he gave up a tripping penalty to Victor Arvidsson, who didn't really trip Detroit's John Merrill. And then, Tim Peel can be heard on the broadcast essentially explaining that, why he made that decision. And obviously the NHL decided to fire him, which is really unfortunate for Tim Peel.
Sort of fire him if you look at the details. Yeah.
Yeah, how he's no longer going to be reffing games.
Yeah, but no one, some made the point that no one said anything about him not getting paid. And he is keeping his pension.
That's a good point.
Because he was going to get, he was set to retire.
Yeah.
Right.
He was
everyone
set
knows
to
that.
retire at the end of the season.
Yeah, so, they're not stripping him of his pension, nothing like that. So,
yeah. So obviously a very unfortunate situation because we all know that this happens in the NHL. It's been going on for years. It goes on in other sports as well. So Lepore, what's your whole take on this Tim Peel hot mic incident?
It's pretty loaded, and I found people when they were talking about it just kept referring to even up calls. The whole talk was even up calls. These are bullshit. You don't want even up calls. And to me, there are two types of even up calls. There are the ones I appreciate and the ones I don't. Starting with the ones I appreciate, the referees are human. They're going to make mistakes. Now, I've always kind of assumed that among the referees, whether it's in between whistles or it's during the intermissions, that discussions are had with regard to calls that were made. So say, 100%. for example, a guy calls a player for a hook. He puts his arm up, gives the guy the 2 minutes. Next commercial break, the other referee might come up to him and say, you know what? I noticed that player clenched the stick in between his arm and got away with it, and you called that hook. So when something like that happens and the referees decide among themselves so that they'll give that team a power play and give them a power play, just the next questionable one, it'll go that team's way to even it up, give them the even up call. I don't have a problem with that. And I don't think anyone really would have a problem with that because at the end of the day, that's fair. It's fair. to reward a team with a power play after they were shorthanded when they shouldn't have been, right? So moving on to the even up calls that I don't like, and I think everybody doesn't like, is the even up calls just to make the power plays even. And we've all seen it where at the end of the game, and you look at the penalties called, and it's always very close. It's 3-3, 4-4, or quite often it's off by one, but it's always very close, and it's always kind of weird. And remember, it blew up last year because someone posted a graph with the penalties given and taken by every team in the NHL and over the course of the entire season. And in both categories, every team was pretty well even, except for like 2 or 3 teams that were kind of a little off. Like for some reason, the Ducks jump into my head as a team that may have been a little off.
And I'm not surprised one bit.
Yeah, and like you think about it, it's like it's kind of hilarious. It doesn't make sense at all in the way that you would think if the game was just called the way the game's called and you saw consistent officiating, well, there'd be teams that take a lot of penalties and also they take a lot of penalties and they're hurt. They benefit on their side as well. They have a lot of high power play games. And then you would have the opposite, very low, but you'd also have teams that say take a lot of penalties, they don't give a lot of penalties, and vice versa. So it was bad. It was a bad look for the NHL last year when that was like came to mainstream media. And then now with this, bad. And you just know that the people I'm trying to find my words here as best I can. The take of a lot of people was the NHL has to do something about this. Well, to everyone, newsflash, the referees are on the side of the NHL. They're not an independent body that works separately from the NHL. They are in partnership and work with the National Hockey League to officiate the game the way the NHL wants it to be officiated. So the NHL knows what's going on, whatever it is, whether it's total bullshit or whether it's fair, the way people want it to be. So there was that awkwardness for me seeing what the NHL did with that statement and letting go of Tim Peel, where at the end of the day, it was just a PR move. The guy got caught on the mic.
100%.
And it's a terrible look. So we have to do something here. And they had to, put that iron fist down to make it look like they're taking a stand and they will not put up with this. But the NHL knows what's going on. They have relationships with the refs. I'm sure they have meetings with the refs all the time and what they want to see and don't want to see. I'm sure I know there's going to be meetings with officials before and after games about what they want to see the referees do and not do. So it was a weird thing of events for me in the way that I'm not surprised by anything. You saw this big backlash. And I guess that was the biggest shock for me was that everyone's like putting their arms up in the air. Like, oh my goodness, like this is crazy. Guys, like, what did you think? Like you just look at the numbers. Anyone who's ever watched the sport or played the sport knows that's just kind of the way it goes. And that's not me trying to justify it, saying, well, that's just the way it is. No, it's just the way it is and the way the game's always kind of been played and officiated for that matter. So, I mean, I think it's one of those things that the NHL is going to try to do their best just to squash and maybe kind of partner with the media bodies to like, let's just hope everyone forgets about this. And in a year or two, it'll just be one of those blips on the radar that never comes up ever again. But we'll move on. We'll see if there's any changes, but I really and truly doubt we're going to see any changes.
Yeah. And here's the thing. This happens all the time. It's been going on for years, and it's not just in the NHL, it's in other sports as well. Now, am I saying that that's right? No, I think the NHL should find a way to address this. But for the people, thinking that it's black and white and, all it's going to take is one phone call with the refs and then they're going to just fix all these problems. Like, that is not going to happen. Yeah. This is not something that you just fix overnight. This is something that is going to take an off season for the NHL to sit down with the refs and essentially go over how they want to call penalties moving forward. Because I don't like when a penalty is called and, the refs realize, oh shit, we fucked this up. So now let's make a phantom call on the other team. Like, sure, Lepore, I know you said that in some instances you think the makeup calls are fair, but I think they have to be warranted too, right? Like I don't think you should be going out here and making phantom calls. Like, and I look at the Tim Peel call that he made on Victor Arvidsson,
Okay.
where he's like, "Oh shit, I need to call a penalty on Nashville." Victor Arvidsson like barely taps John Merrill's skate, tripping penalty. Nashville, you got to go on the power play. We got to give you a power play now. And I do get frustrated from time to time. Like, when I'm watching a Leaf game, for example, and I see, okay, the Leafs have just had like 2 power plays in a row, and you're sitting there and
You
you're
just
like,
know, yeah.
you're like, well, the opposition is going to get a power play in the next few minutes here because they can't give the Leafs a 3rd power play in a row. God forbid.
But that's the bad even up that I was referring to. Like for me, the one I think I'm more okay with, and again, it's not perfect, is the one when there is a blown call. And then
that's fair. That's
so
fair.
like, and again, it's not ideal. I just think to me, I'll put it this way. That's understandable to me. That's at least, and I think that's almost kind of like human nature too, that one of your buddy referees comes up to you and says, "Hey, you fucking blew that call." I think it's natural human reaction to like, I kind of owe that team one now. So
yeah, and that happens. And like, I'm not like, outraged by that at all, but I think it does have to get to a point where if you do blow a call, and listen, refs are going to continue to blow calls, right? They're humans making decisions. They're watching the game in real time. Like they're going to make bad decisions. It's inevitable, right? But I think it has to get to a point where they're not necessarily out there like hunting to make a makeup call. Like if you make a mistake, so be it. You got to just continue going. You got to take that mistake, and you can't be giving out phantom calls. And I kind of look at Major League Baseball when it comes to this, where an umpire realized that a ball was like 3 inches outside, and he's like, "Oh crap! Now I got it. Now I got to give this pitcher a call, like in the next inning or whatever." Right? And I don't know. I don't like that. And I understand that
you're saying scrap it. You're saying you made a bad call, but throw it in the garbage. It is what it is now.
You made a bad call. Throw it in the garbage and just continue on. And do we want to see one team have like 8 power plays in a game and the other team doesn't? No, not necessarily. But listen, if that other team is making stupid decisions and taking bad penalties, then you know what? Screw that team. Then you're going to be killing 8 penalties in that game, and so be it. But I just think the big thing is that there's a lot of gray area involved here, and it's like I said, this is not something that the NHL is just going to immediately fix. They're not just going to snap their fingers and from now until the end of the season, all these refs are going to be calling games differently. Like if you think that that's going to happen, I'm sorry, but you're out of your mind.
Yeah, that's true.
Right. That's just kind of the reality of the situation. So
I'm sure there's a lot of meetings. There's a lot of meetings scheduled right now to have these discussions on how do we make people happy, or at least make it appear like we're doing things a little differently.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, if Tim Peel does not get caught on that hot mic, like this just continues to go on.
You know what's funny? My point the next day was like Nashville was going off, right? Like I don't know if you saw like Duchesne did an interview about how ridiculous it was, whatever. And I thought right away, well, if there wasn't the hot mic, would you be on the radio today going nuts about what this referee said?
No, absolutely
no. Like
not.
he was like, oh, I was all confused by what he was saying, and that's just ridiculous. He's got to referee the game fairly. You wouldn't be saying shit, bud, if this is the way it is, if that didn't get caught on the mic. So I just found it kind of humorous.
No, absolutely. And then like when you get into the playoffs, right? And, a lot of the times the refs decide to put their whistles away, especially in overtime. You don't want to be that guy that like makes that questionable call when you're in like double OT in the second round of the playoffs and you give that team a power play and they win the series. But yeah, I think it's just one of those things where the NHL just has to figure this shit out. They got to stick to a plan and make it transparent and say, listen, this is how we're going to call these games. Whether it's preseason, regular season, Stanley Cup final, we're going to try our best. There's going to be mistakes, but here's what we're going to try to do moving forward. So who knows, Lepore, when that's ever going to happen with the NHL, because as we know, a lot of the times this league is making decisions that make us shake our head.
Yeah, I always say hockey is the best sport in the world, but the NHL is the worst fucking league in the world.
Yeah. Oh, there's a lot of times where I'm just left.
Oh my God.
Absolutely shaking my head.
Why do we follow this? Like
unreal, man. But another thing that we got to get into on this show, Lepore, this past week, the NHL Board of Governors ratified the new draft lottery system.
Yes.
So I know you have some strong opinions on this. So for those who aren't aware of the changes, so recently the NHL has been doing a lottery for the top 3 picks in the draft. So now it's going down from the top 3 picks to the top 2 picks. So they're only going to do a lottery for the top 2 picks. Just some other things to bring up. Teams will only be allowed to jump 10 spots with a lottery win. So if you have like the 13th best odds to win the lottery and you happen to win it, you obviously can't move up to the number 1 pick under this system. You'd be moving up to the 3rd pick. And then the other point, I believe that's, the other point here, Lepore, is that teams will only be limited to 2 lottery wins in a 5-year period. So you're not going to be like the Edmonton Oilers, like winning 17 lotteries in a row.
But I found that one interesting, and I'd like to see the further details of that, because the way it's worded is that you can't win the lottery more than twice in that span, in the 5-year span. But that doesn't mean you can't pick first more than twice. Because, for example, if you're dead last and then it's won by teams who are above 10, and then say you win it twice, and there's a situation where you're dead last, and that, you see what I'm saying? Like, you can get it 5 times in a row, in theory, if it goes your way. Saying. So I'm wondering if that's actually the case, or by winning they also mean you can't get 1. But from the wording, it's like, no, you can get 1 more than once. You just can't win the lottery more than once. So I guess we'll see. They'll explain it as we get closer to the actual lottery. But yeah, my take on this, Bruno, is that it's almost like we're not even going to talk about sports here. We're talking about just like life and human nature, in the way that people are never happy. People are never happy, and people are always looking to the other side. Because if you remember years back when you had the Oilers picking first every year, there was a serious problem with that format, because with that format, you could only move up 5 spots and only 1 team won the lottery. So if you were dead last, the worst you were going to pick was second. And if you added the chance you had yourself of winning the lottery, as well as the chance of a team outside the top 5 winning the lottery, I think the Oilers had like a 60-70% chance to pick first every year. Now, that system was wrong. And with that, the whole problem was tanking. It really and truly encouraged tanking. And nobody wants that, really. At the end of the day, nobody wants to encourage tanking. So I understood the change. So then you move to the current format we had, or the format we had, where they were going to raffle off 3 spots. So 3 spots, every team that's not in the playoffs, based on percentage, you were given odds, and off we go. Okay? So now you have this format where they're going to raffle off 2, because they say, you know what, we don't think it's fair for teams to have a strong chance to win the lottery if you're not in the basement. You know, the basement teams are the teams that should have the best chance of getting a franchise-changing player. So to me now, you're contradicting yourself, because before you didn't want to encourage tanking, but now you're saying, well, the teams in the basement are the ones that should get the franchise-changing player. And this all happened because once now, you had the New York Rangers, who I think they were 12th or 13th worst in the league, win the lottery and move up to number 1. Nothing's changed. And even how the Rangers won, it was kind of a one-off in the way of the format last year, based on how they structured the playoffs, and they had to put the teams who lost in the
teams
playoffs.
That lost in the qualifying round entered the lottery. So it's like, oh my God, these teams that technically made the playoffs are out in the lottery. And
again, like, to me, my problem with that whole thing was that they let too many teams in. So like I think that was the problem they made, in the way that, okay, like, so the Leafs, they lost, and the Leafs were in the lottery. It's like, well, the Leafs, I'm going to be neutral here, the Leafs shouldn't have been in the lottery. But then I'll take my other take too and say, well, the Leafs shouldn't have had to play a play-in. Like, they were in a playoff spot, not comfortably, but it looked like they were going to get in the playoffs. So now you're making them, so you can't have it both ways. The NHL had to do something. But now you have this, and you're encouraging tanking again, because you're giving these teams at the very bottom a better chance to pick high. And like, I think the problem people had was not necessarily tanking itself. Like, I shouldn't say that. Everyone's got a problem with tanking, but I think the major problem people had was teams doing it multiple times and picking high multiple times. So if it was up to me, I would have kept the same format that we had with the 3 teams winning the lottery, but say put in some stipulations where, and it kind of works in the way that the top 2 or 3 players are typically like the big 3. There's usually a big 3 in the way that like you have like 1 or 2 North American skaters and a defenseman, or 1 like, Swedish defenseman or something like that. So how I would have done it was something along the lines of, if you win the lottery and pick in the top 3, or if you pick in the top 3, you can't pick in the top 3 the next year. The highest you can pick is 4th. And at 4, 5, 6, like you still get, that's still a high pick. So you just can't pick in the top 3 2 years in a row, and then put in something that if you pick it 1, you can't pick in the top 3 for maybe 2 years or something, or you can't pick it 1 for a certain amount of years. Like, do something like that. I don't think anyone would have had a problem with that, because people were getting pissed off, not because Edmonton was tanking and getting first overall those years. They're pissed off because it kept happening. It's like, if you're bad, you're bad. Or if you're trying to be bad, okay, we'll let you do it once or twice to try to rebuild your team. But no, when it's getting ridiculous and teams are at the bottom 4 or 5 years in a row and they're always picking high, if not at number 1, that's where people get frustrated. And with this current format, I think you're asking for that again. Whereas,
it's like now the NHL is yo-yoing back and forth between, how they want it to be done.
We would not be here had Detroit or Ottawa won the lottery last year.
Yeah. And I was just going to say that about Detroit. I think that was a major issue that
because they picked
had
4th
as well. Or they're like, Detroit was horrendous last season, like historically bad. Obviously had the best chance at landing one of the top 2 picks, and they ended up picking 4th.
Yeah, they got
so
leaped,
teams are like, what the fuck? Like,
so the combination of that and the Rangers getting 1 was a bad mix. Yeah,
it was like a perfect storm of the worst team in the NHL drops down to 4th, and then a team that had no business picking in the top 3 lands the number 1 pick and picks Alexis Lafreniere.
Yeah.
But no, Lepore, I agree with you for the most part, like, because I hated it when the Oilers were picking first overall year after year. It's like, okay, they get Taylor Hall, and then they picked first again with Nail Yakupov, who ended up being a bust. And then, oh my God, now they have Connor McDavid. And that was a year that I believe the Buffalo Sabres had the worst record in the NHL. And I remember
Edmonton actually won it. They were like 5th or something, and they actually won it. It wasn't a case of they just didn't get leaped. They won it. Yeah,
exactly. And I remember Sabres Twitter at that time. Like, they were so fired up because they're like, yes, we guarantee at least Jack Eichel.
Yeah.
Now that we're dead last, right? And then, of course, Edmonton wins the lottery again. And then the NHL is like, oh my God, like, we can't let this keep happening. Like, we got to switch this system around. And now it's like you said, they're essentially just going back to that because of one season. And, like you said, Lepore, it was a one-off season. You have COVID, you have the return to play plan where the NHL has 24 teams return for the playoffs. And then the teams that lose in the qualifying round go into the lottery. So, I mean, I know people were pissed off that the Rangers won the lottery, but can you imagine like Pittsburgh?
Dude, Toronto.
Or the Leafs, like,
dude, I'm sure you saw the camera. The Leafs ball hit the tube. Like, can you imagine the shitstorm had Toronto won the lottery?
Oh,
and there was that part of me that would have been like, good, you created this stupid format. Like, let Pittsburgh or Toronto get it, to be a slap in the face of how stupid you guys all are. Like,
oh my God, like, my God. Twitter would have absolutely blown up.
Meltdown.
And even if Edmonton had won the lottery last year too, like there was, those 3 teams were in play. And if any of those teams had won, like, it would have just been Armageddon. For the NHL on Twitter.
It's funny because I remember even seeing, and like, this would have been absolutely hilarious, how they do it with the percentages. If I remember correctly, each team owns combinations. And I think the combinations are all 4 numbers. And the Matthews year, after 3 numbers, when they were drawing the 4th number, Edmonton had the best chance to win.
Unbelievable.
And I think Toronto only had like a 10-15% chance to win. And then the fourth ball gave them the right combination. But they would have had Edmonton was like, I think they had like a 50-60% chance going into the last ball to get first overall in Austin Matthews. So it's just
crazy,
like they can't seem to get it right. But again, I think the problem is not about a team picking first or a team tanking. It's about multiple years in a row. And that's what has to be stopped. And even this is where like I get so confused by people's decisions sometimes. So they did the thing now, like, oh, okay, you can only move up 10. You can only move up 10. So you have to be in the bottom third of the league. Well, and again, they did it because I think the Rangers had like the 12th or 13th worst record. But now, okay, so it's towards the end of the season and your team is dangling at like 10, 11, 12 worst. You're not tanking.
Yeah, it's like, of course you're going to tank at that point.
Of course you're going to tank at that point to try to get in that lottery chance. What do you have to gain, right? So I think they can't seem to get it right. I think they listen to the cries. Like they listen to the cries, and to me, that's a big fail. And I think something as simple as keeping it the way it was, but you can't pick in the top 3 X amount of years in a row, and you can't pick one X amount of years in a row, or if you pick it one, the best you can pick it is 4th or something the 2 years after that. Everyone would have been okay with that, because even 2 on the other side, who would really argue with that? If you say, okay, you pick it 1, so next year, if you're dead last, you pick 4. Well, it's still 4.
Yeah, that's still a top 5 pick. You're still getting a really good player.
Pick. Yeah,
like maybe you're not getting like a generational talent, but you're going to get a pretty damn impactful player in that spot.
Yeah, so
you do your homework.
Yeah, so again, like the whole thing of it's so good to be bad on purpose. As much as people don't want to hear that a lot, just the higher you pick, the better. But I just think it was a fail, and I can't wait till a few years from now you're going to have teams tanking multiple years in a row again. Same thing over and over, and then they're going to be like, oh, well, we're encouraging tanking. We need to change this again. And again, what were we saying about the NHL being a joke?
Exactly.
Exactly.
It's the same thing, just with the refereeing situation. It's the exact same thing when it comes down to the draft lottery, Lepore.
People forget, too, the McDavid year, Boston missed the playoffs. They had like a one-off year where they missed out. They came like 9th in the conference or 10th in the conference. Can you imagine?
Oh God.
Oh my God.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, we probably wouldn't have a podcast because we'd be just hiding under sheets somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
The Boston Bruins with Connor McDavid. Oh God,
we'd be in hiding for a long time if the Bruins had Connor McDavid.
Gross.
All right, Lepore. Well, we can shake our heads and laugh at the NHL all we want, but yeah, it's like you said. I mean, this stuff is probably going to just continue to happen because all it takes is one GM to come crying to Gary Bettman and Bill Daley and say, we need to change this. We're not happy with how this has gone down. So it's never ending with this league. But Lepore, before we wrap up this podcast, let's just go over the Leafs upcoming week. So after all the rest they got over the last couple of weeks, they're now playing 4 games this upcoming week. They got the Oilers again at home on Monday night, and then they're on the road for 3 straight. They have 2 against the Winnipeg Jets, and then they end off the week Sunday against the Calgary Flames. So
huge.
What are you looking forward to seeing this week with the Toronto Maple Leafs?
I mean, seems like they're all big weeks, but to play Edmonton again, it'd be nice to solidify our dominance over them even further. And then the Jets haven't been that good lately, man. I know a lot of people, when the Leafs were kind of on their slump, people were saying, I think that the Jets hadn't lost like 2 games in a row all year or something, and people were saying it's coming, and it seems like it's kind of come over them a bit. They lost last night to Calgary in kind of a weird game, but I mean, what can I expect from the Leafs? I expect the Leafs to carry the play. Do I expect the scoreboard to reflect the way they play, as we just talked earlier? I'm really hoping it will. So I'm hoping to see goals, man. I'm hoping to see goals, and I'm a little nervous. I'm starting to get a little nervous for the goaltending. We got these big games coming up, and these numbers have to adjust for Campbell, right? Like, again, he played well against Edmonton. He made a few big saves, kind of doing what we said earlier we were hoping him to do, in the way that, just make the save, those 1 or 2 saves when we need you. But I'm a little nervous for his adjustment, because it's going to come eventually where he's going to have a bad week or whatever. Like, he's not going to have a 9.5 or a 9.6 save percentage all year. So
that's a good point.
Yeah.
Because Jack Campbell right now, Lepore 6-0 with a 1.48 goals against and a 945 save percentage.
And even you look at the goals. It's like, see, those 2 goals, take away those 2 goals against Ottawa, which aren't really goals, and people know what I mean by that. And then against Edmonton, like, beautiful goals. So has he really let in a bad goal yet? You know what I mean?
Really.
So, no, not really. So I'm kind of waiting for it. It's going to happen. It happens to every goalie. So I just really hope it doesn't happen all at once. Or you know what? It may be better if it happens all at once. Jack, just have one really, really bad game. Don't let these bad goals flutter over 3 or 4 games. But that's what I'm kind of nervous for. But at the same time, I'm excited to see the Leafs play the teams they're battling with for top in the division. So
yeah, it should be a great week. And you hit the nail on the head. What I'm looking forward to is just actually seeing, the possession numbers and the shot attempts actually translate to the score sheet. Because I feel like we have the same conversation week after week. And I don't know if I'm losing my mind, if I'm not seeing things correctly, but the Leafs are carrying the play almost every single night. Lepore.
I've been doing that too. I'm like, am I just biased? Like, they're actually not playing as well as I think. And then I look at the numbers. It's like, no, they are. Yeah.
I caught myself saying that too. It's like, I'm like, am I this biased where I'm just thinking the Leafs are controlling play every night and dominating all these games? And then, then you go look at the advanced metrics and you go check the numbers and you're like, holy shit, this team is carrying the play literally almost every single night. Like, I can maybe count on one hand the games this year where like the Leafs were outplayed and you could, just without any doubt whatsoever say, okay, the Leafs didn't deserve that game. They were bad. They got outplayed. Yeah. But for the most part, that just has not happened this season. But what has been happening is that the Leafs are dominating the play and they're not scoring nearly as much as they should be. So that's what I'm looking forward to this week, is actually seeing them get out to a nice lead, score some goals, control the play, not have to chase any of these games.
Allow us to relax.
Exactly. And I think we've been getting into too many games recently with the Leafs where they're just chasing the game. Games that they should be leading, games that should be comfortable for the most part. And listen, it's not always going to be comfortable, right? There are going to be games, obviously, where you control a lot of the play and you lose. Like, we've obviously seen that several times with this team this season. But I think we're going to see a little bit of positive regression, I would hope, from now until the end of the season, where the Leafs are actually going to start winning some of these games more comfortably than they have been. So, big week. Edmonton and Winnipeg, and then obviously they're going to play Calgary, who's outside of the playoff picture at the moment. So it's another big week for the Leafs, Lepore. So any final thoughts before we wrap this thing up?
No, man. Just let's do it. 3 big games. Let's go. We're back on top in the division. We never, not that we ever fell off the top, but it seems like we created 2 points of breathing room now, as opposed to like, we just have games in hand type thing. So let's have a good week and let's get comfortable. Let's be where we think we all should be.
You said it, Lepore. The Leafs still first place in the Canadian division. All they got to do is go out there, continue to play the way they're playing. And honestly, this team should win this division and control everything from now until the end of the season. So let's just see it happen and let's see them execute. And that's all it comes down to. Yeah, all right, everybody. That is going to do it for episode 12 of the Gluttons for Punishment Podcast, or GFP, a Toronto Maple Leafs and NHL podcast hosted by Michael Lepore and Anthony Bruno. And if you're listening to us, whether it's on Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever, we would really, really appreciate it if you go on there and give us a 5-star rating and review. It really helps us out. And then, of course, if you're watching us on YouTube, it would be incredible if you hammered that like button, subscribe to the channel, and rang that notification bell so you know exactly when the GFP podcast is releasing some new content. So that's going to do it for Michael Lepore. I'm Anthony Bruno, and we will see you in the next episode.
Thanks, everyone.